Slade may have bragged about his martial arts prowess, but the only degrees he's worried about right now is his own body temperature. Here's a look at McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse, the Gold Label Collection, Frostbite Edition, Deathstroke. Slade Wilson is a mercenary and assassin for hire with no qualms about crossing lines to get the job done, no matter where those lines are drawn. A formidable operative for the U.S. military, Colonel Slade Wilson agreed to undergo an experimental process that increased his mental and physical abilities to superhuman levels. Rather than continue his career as a soldier, Slade became the masked mercenary Deathstroke. This decision resulted in his wife leaving him and his son Grant being permanently injured, as well as the death of his son Grant, who sought to emulate Slade. Incredibly detailed 7-inch scale figure based on DC Multiverse, designed with ultra articulation with up to 22 moving parts for a full range of posing and play. Deathstroke features Frostbite, translucent cyan deco. Accessories include sword, knife, and also includes a figure display base, authenticated collector art card, and an art card display base. I think Wilson should be worrying a whole lot less about bounties and a whole lot more about blankets. Brr. Just before, of course, we get a closer look at the DC Multiverse DC Rebirth Frostbite Edition Deathstroke, I'd like to thank the folks over at McFarlane Toys that provided this sample we could have a look at. This figure, in fact, was a GameStop 2024 exclusive, and it was limited to only 5,000 copies worldwide. Checking just prior to hitting record, and GameStop seems to have sold out the figure. So if you're looking to get this one for yourself, you may have to check to other sources. The figure is going to stand the same as the original DC Rebirth Deathstroke. Don't worry, I'll be bringing that one in shortly in a second. So he's going to stand at 7 inches in height, or Deathstroke, is going to stand 18 centimeters tall. Yeah, this guy is actually just a recasting of the original DC Rebirth Deathstroke. Although really looking at the two, I would swear to you that this guy is actually a little bit taller. And I think it really has more just to do with the fact I don't maybe have the legs completely straight, but it does seem like maybe this Deathstroke is just a tad bit taller. I know that's not the case at all. I mean, it's just a case, honestly, though, that they've used the existing mold that they had at their disposal. It makes the most sense, honestly. They've cast it in translucent blue plastic, and then they've frosted it up in white over top. If you're familiar with this guy's accessories, you'll be familiar with this guy's accessories, as he comes included with the exact same things. What he does, though, have that the other one didn't, is that the figure now comes included with a much elongated rectangular display stand, something that gets afforded the Gold Label Collection releases. The actual stand is one we've seen before. The DC logo is also one we've seen before. A much larger branding on the top there. And while it's not necessarily in the corner, off dead from the center, you get yourself a little peg that can plug into either one of the figure's feet. It is, though, using, if I can show you, a clear translucent plastic. I mean, again, like the whole lay of the land, and in fact, is all translucent plastic. So I would worry that maybe perhaps that peg would break, as that's the only thing that's on the figure that's using translucent. I know what you're thinking. The body, the pegs themselves, the things that move the joints, are all not using translucent plastic. This place is. Move that off to the side. The figure does also come included with a podium stand that holds the card. Just happens to be one that's just bringing in the comedian Joker. Not that I necessarily went out of my way to source out the comedian, but at least to show you guys, it's using the same podium standee. It also holds the card the same way, so we just go ahead and take the card off to the top. We'll come back to that in a second. The card itself doesn't give really any indication that this guy is under the cold, but it does have, though, the Frostbite edition, and then technically, I suppose you could say as well that the border around it is kind of more of a light, kind of whitish blue. I really like, actually, the way it transitions down to being a darker blue, a little bit more lighter to the top, though. On the back of the card, you're not going to get a read-up. Oh, no. What you're going to get instead, though, is a certificate of authenticity. Listed out of the 5,000 copies worldwide, the one that was offered up to me was actually P6, and there's a signature down below by Todd McFarlane himself. I know, it's not really the signature, it's just a stamp on the card, but a nice looking card, though. I'm going to put this back onto the podium. Figures like this, though, I may have even mentioned that in the earlier reviews, I kind of go by a figure-to-figure basis. If the podium standee looks cool, I see what I did there, then I tend to display it with the figure. If I don't, I end up just putting it back in the packaging, and I display the figure separately. By the way, the podium, like the display base, is using this, again, translucent, very light blue plastic. Again, they brushed on here the indication that this is cold with a little bit of white paint. It goes a long way. Let's move that off to the side. So I did already say, though, that the accessories with this guy happen to be the same ones that we got before with the DC Rebirth. And, of course, the figure does come included with a sword. I have a little bit of tape, I just realized now. I didn't peel that. Still stuck right on there. There we go. Take that off completely. I want to bring in the original sword. I don't happen to have the knife. I don't know where the knife, what whereabouts went, but you can see at least the sword using the exact same mold. And because of that, it's also being held in his hands the exact same way. It also attaches on the back of his body. If you did want to, though, you could, of course, take the sword and just fit it into his hands. I still got that tape. I thought I removed the tape, but it's still there. Hold on, let me just... The problem with this also using translucent plastic like this is things like tape blend into the background. There it is, right there. See that? If I wasn't going to remove that, it would have killed you and everybody else you ever cared about. Let's discard that tape. As I was, though, saying, you can take the sword and can fit into his hands. I've been now so distracted by that tape. Get into his hands, and you kind of have to really twist it just because it. You can see like the handle does have a little bit of like sculpting to it. It isn't just a straight, smooth handle. So if you want to, you can, of course, have it in this hand. Hey, why not? You can also have it in this hand as well. If you didn't want to have it in either, one thing you can also do is I already gave it away. I spilt the beans. Is that if you look at the back of the figure, like with the original one, there's a holster here. It isn't even so much a holster. It's just literally a clip. You just take the sword, slide it down. You want to make sure you get it all the way down there. You can also, I mean, you don't have to slide it down because obviously it's going to hit resistance. The bigger and broader the blade is. What you can also do too is find the more narrower part. Narrower part? That's a word I can't even say. And you can kind of fit it in that way as well. Like that. Also, the figure does come included with a knife. Now, I did already say, I don't even know where the other knife went. It's so small. I mean, it probably fell out of the bag where I was storing Deathstroke for the time being. It's probably down at the bottom, down in the depths of my totes. I'm sure if I was looking for it, I probably would be able to find it. But it's still cast in that... Oh, for a second, I thought it had some more tape. It is cast, though, in the same light blue plastic. Again, you can fit into either one of his hands. But, like with the original, you can also holster on the side of his leg. That would have been really the smart thing to do. I want to make sure I've got it flipped the right way. There we go. That would have been the smart thing to do. Clearly, though, if you're looking at this guy, I didn't end up doing that. Shucks. Getting, though, a closer look at Deathstroke, let's go ahead and just remove this right now. Bringing back in, obviously, the other one so we can see. From a mold standpoint, short of maybe just the casting of plastic that they chose, the figures are exactly the same to one another. Obviously, with this one, you had the benefit of the darker colors and the orange added in there as well. This one really only is relying on just the blue and then the frosting of the white over top of it. I mean, it looks good, but it does kind of beg one question. It may even be the same question you guys are asking yourselves right now. Why? Why did we need a Frostbite version of Deathstroke? Why, for that matter, did we need a Frostbite version of any DC Multiverse figure? Maybe short of a guy that has been beaten by Sub-Zero. Would have been probably the only reason why I could have justified this guy even being released. My plan, perhaps, for displaying this guy is probably the same plan I would have if I picked up any more Frostbite editions, is maybe having him inside Mr. Freeze's lair. Like, yeah, Mr. Freeze, which I have to use our imagination. Mr. Freeze is right here. I probably could have had like some of the heroes kind of behind him. A Frostbite version of Batman, or Robin for that matter, would have made most sense. I don't know if freezing necessarily a villain would have made the most sense, but here we are, and here we are looking at the figure. I mean, for what he is, even though I kind of have to question why he even exists, I think the mold works really quite well, but I think the mold was fine and good in the first place anyways. You do lose, obviously, some of the more notable features of the figure's face, what little face he actually does have. I mean, it does look like I don't think they've changed at all anything between the two. I mean, because he doesn't have as many of the features, like his eye, for example, that little, little marking that he has on the orange side of his mask, because it doesn't have it, it sort of looks like he does have almost like a Sub-Zero kind of mask to him. He does, of course, have the little, I don't know what you call it, little strips that he has, little bands, strings, I guess, on the back of his mask. Those are there as well. It's one of the only things that are on the figure that isn't using a translucent plastic. The only other thing that also isn't using that translucent plastic is luckily the joints. Because if not for that, that would be something that would be giving you possible problems down the road. Because also, if you are moving figures like this, I already know I've had a history with using translucent plastic joints, and they always end up breaking. Because they were smart enough to use opaque plastic here and pretty much everywhere else on the figure that uses a ball joint or a hinge joint, you're not going to have as many worries down the road that anything on the figure, like his arms, like his head, his legs even for that matter, are going to break on him. Molding, again, it sort of gets, a lot of this gets lost just because, again, like you're only really relying on the blue plastic, and then you're only just relying on, if it wasn't really for the paint, I feel like so much more of the figure's mold would have been lost. Still, though, I mean, it's interesting enough. I just not really sure why. I just don't know why. If you don't know why either, but you want to know certainly the figure's articulation, well, let's follow up with that. Let's go ahead. Start with the head. Head's going to rotate all the way around. It's on a ball joint. The head's going to look down and look up. You can also move it back and forth as well. The upper torso is going to be on a ball joint. The lower torso is actually on a ball joint as well. It's kind of weird though, like if you're looking at it, because this part of his trunks, first of all, is a softer plastic. This is also covering over his abdomen area. It's the one area that didn't actually get paint, so you can kind of see what the basic plastic would have looked like without paint on it. Ball joint, like I said, is going to be on the abdomen area as well. You can take, sure, the arms and rotate them all the way around. Take them as well. You can extend them out at 90 degrees. This arm's a little on the more tighter side. I don't know why. I've tried to kind of, I want to coax it in a way that it doesn't feel like it's intimidated. I mean, this arm moved fine. I don't know, but this arm is a little more hung up. I may have to go back and just persuade it. As I said, though, like you can move the arm out this way. There is a swivel in the bicep. The figure does have still a double hinge on the elbow, but so relieved to see that the figure does have opaque plastic. Unfortunately, it does mean that it's going to stand out. So if you're looking at everything that's around it, it isn't going to be quite the same color, but it's pretty close. And again, I would rather close colors than having the same colors and that potentially breaking. So, you have to pick your battles. Like I said, he does have a double hinge on the elbow. The hands rotate all the way around. You can also hinge them back and forth as well. When we move down to the lower half, the bottom of the basement, I suppose, the legs do split out. They're on ball joints. And again, you're using opaque plastic for that. You can take the legs and move forward. You can move them back. There's a swivel there at the top of the thigh. Double hinge on the knee. I think if anything, I would say like the knees are the things that stand out the most. But, it's one of the unavoidable things. Had they used white plastic, it would have even stood out even more. They tried their best to match the colors, and I don't think that plastic colors is all that off. But it's more noticeable definitely, though, in the knees than anywhere else in the figure's body. Like I said, though, double hinge on the knees. You got the articulation there back and forth on the ankle. You can rock it back and forth. And the figure does also have toe articulation as well. Maybe it's not necessarily the question I'm asking is why. Maybe the better question I should be asking is why Deathstroke? Deathstroke, for me, being that he's already a villain, I don't think I would have pictured him to be the Frostbite type. Again, bringing back in the original Deathstroke so you guys can see. If anything, I would have maybe, and probably they have already released other versions of Frostbite editions, I probably would have done a hero. I mean, I think it would have made more sense to do like a Batman, a Robin, a Nightwing even, and then have those being Frostbites. Because if you kind of look at this and you sort of scratch your head, you're not even sure really why this guy had to exist in the first place. I feel, if anything, you could justify that it's a hero, because my plan would then be, if you have a Mr. Freeze, hey, why not? You could have yourself sort of like like a statue throne room where he just has all the heroes, all as frozen statues. That would be kind of fun. Unless maybe he crossed paths with Deathstroke and maybe he just didn't like the way that Deathstroke was handling business, so he handled business his own way and ended up freezing the assassin instead. One of the benefits of these deluxe treatment releases is that with a larger rectangular display stand, you have a larger footprint to accommodate the figure. So if you want to put him in a better pose than just standing so straight like a statue, you can at least pull that off. Circular display stands are fine and good, but you really need the length of stands like this in order to accommodate poses like this. Now, of course, I've got the card stand behind that. Not sure if that's going to be the way it's going to be transitioned over to my shelf, or I'm just going to end up putting the podium back in the packaging. The figure, though, is displayed, as you can see, in a pose. He's a martial arts expert after all. Maybe, for all we know, he was frozen that way. Still looking at this figure, while I like the idea that on paper, they obviously the most mileage out of a mold, they just took an existing mold, which already was good before. The one that we did get from the DC Rebirth Deathstroke was a fine figure for its time, and it still continues to be a fine figure. But choosing this figure as the example, as the character that we want to use for Frostbite, I think rather for me, I would have gone with a hero myself than necessarily a villain. But he looks good. I mean, he fits the part well, for his accessories. I mean, even though he's not going to be moving much in the way of his limbs, the figure does still come included with the exact same sword and the same knife, even though I couldn't find the other one that the original Deathstroke also had as well. You lose some of the finer details just because, again, like, if you're casting this guy in clear plastic or any one of those shades of clear plastic, then you're pretty much then having to deal with the idea that details get lost. It goes with the territory. But at least, though, with Deathstroke, he had a pretty good mold to start with. Though he's losing some of it, he's not losing at least facial features, because after all, the man is wearing a mask. As already mentioned, this guy was a GameStop 2024 exclusive. Sad also to say that it was limited to only 5,000 copies, and even to be a bigger bearer of bad news, that he has sold out online. If you guys are interested to get this one for yourself, you probably check the places like eBay and hope that you don't have to pay too much if you want to get your hands on one for yourself. Let me know down below in the comments section what you guys think of Frostbite Edition Deathstroke, and what other characters would you like to see get the Frostbite treatment. Again, right away, this is going to be one I'm going to be displayed with Mr. Freeze. A Batman would have been ideal, or even a Robin. Robin's always getting in trouble, whether it's in the comics or it's in Batman and Robin. I mean, who was the one that got frozen by Mr. Freeze? It wasn't Batman. It was Robin. Anyways, big thank you once again to the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did provide this sample of this. This was the DC Rebirth GameStop exclusive Frostbite Edition Deathstroke. If you guys did enjoy this video, by the way, do it a solid. Throw it a like. You guys want to stick around for more so? I hope so. Hit the subscribe, turn on the bell, and of course the biggest thing is that you're coming back. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.